Let me bring Kara up here real quick. She had so much to do with this. She paid for an awful lot of this herself. Let's give her a big round of applause. And every one of the doctors who spoke did an outstanding job. And Dr. Sally, thank you, buddy. I know how hard you worked on this as well. And I really appreciate what you said about your mom and dad and how they escaped communism. And they understand. They really understand. This lady standing next to me is my wife. The reason I brought her up here is because she spent 14 years studying medicine, and she became an internist after all that work and going through her residency. And the reason I brought her up here is, do you know that the average family practitioner, if this legislation goes through, they estimate will lose between $16,000 and $17,000 a year in income. And can you imagine somebody going through 14 years of study to get to be a doctor, knowing full well the government was going to control their practice and cut their salary, the amount of money they can make? You're going to lose an awful lot of doctors and people who would like to be doctors because of government regulation. That's something we cannot tolerate, must not tolerate. The doctors have done such a good job, I'm not going to give my hour and 30-minute speech. It's only going to be about 5 minutes. I want to tell you, doctors, you know more about this bill than most members of Congress do. You really do. You know what this is here? This is the bill that went through the House, and it had another 30 or 40 pages, so it was over 2,000 pages long. And when you go through a bill, if you're in the Congress, you have to look at page 45, for instance, and you have to refer back to the code or other laws that it may be changing. And for a member of Congress to go through this in 72 hours is insane. They simply can't do it. And then the Senate bill that they just passed, or they're going to try to get cloture today so they can go ahead and debate it, that bill nobody's seen. I mean, it's coming to the floor right now, and they're going to debate whether or not to cut off the filibuster so they can bring this bill to the floor for a complete debate in the amendatory process, and they haven't read that as well. It's just terrible. Now, let me just tell you something that's very important. I see a lot of little children out here today. This year, we will have spent, to this day, $1.4 trillion more than we've taken in. This health care bill that they're trying to run through will cost, in my opinion, at least $3 trillion over the next decade, and probably a great deal more than that. And we don't have the money. And what's going to happen is they're going to have to continue to print the money. The president was on Fox News the other night and said, we have to get control of spending. Well, Mr. President, if you're listening, do it. Don't just talk about it. What we're facing, in addition to a health care catastrophe, in my opinion, is hyperinflation. You can just count on it. We're going to have very high inflation before too long. And you're going to have higher interest rates, and you're going to have higher taxes. As a matter of fact, if this legislation passes, they have to take it to conference committee to work out their differences. But if this legislation passes, it's going to cost at least $750 billion in new taxes. And you guys are going to pay for it. They'll tell you not only the wealthy are going to pay for it, but if you look at it, the employers who don't comply, they're going to have an 8% tax levied on them if they don't comply. And so what they're going to do is they're going to dump their employees on the government plan and just pay the 8% instead of taking care of their employees themselves. If you have to have a prosthetic device, if you have to have a wheelchair, they're going to levy a 2.5% tax on that. People that really need that. That's something that's intolerable. We shouldn't be doing that. They're going to be taxing everybody and their brother and their sister. This is one of the worst pieces of legislation I've seen in my time in Congress. Edmund Burke said, and so did Thomas Jefferson, the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. And if we ever needed to be vigilant, we need to do it right now. Today, as we speak, they're talking about this bill in the United States Senate. And they're trying to get 60 votes to cut off the filibuster and bring this bill to the floor for the complete debate, and that's when they're going to try to ram all this stuff through. I would urge you, when you leave here today, call Senator Bayh. I think Lugar's okay, but you can call him as well. Call your congressman, call Barron Hill and all the congressmen and tell them this is something that must not happen. It's going to cause rationing of health care. It's going to cause tax increases. It's going to cause inflation. And your doctor is going to have somebody in Washington telling them how far they can go to take care of you. And I don't think a bureaucrat up there, a health care commissioner, should be doing that. Now, I'm not going to talk any longer. I'm just going to let you folks and me and my wife get in the march and show the support that you've already shown today. I want to thank the doctors who spoke. You did an outstanding job. You really did. You covered this better. You've covered this better than most congressmen and senators I've heard trying to explain the bill, and you did it very well. Anyhow, this is the time to fight. And what one of the doctors said, I think it was Dr. Sally, was it you? I think it was Dr. Sally that said, if this becomes law, we're stuck with it. We are going to have socialized medicine. Now, I don't think that any of you want socialism in America. You don't want the government controlling everything that you do. They're already trying to take over not only the automobile industry and the banking industry, the financial industry, but with cap and trade, the energy industry. And now they're going for the big enchilada. 16%, 1/6 of our entire economy is related to health care. We must not let this happen. We don't need to go down this road to socialism. And with that, thank you, and God bless every one of you.